Before my mother remarried and Papa saved me, life was a little bit tough. My mother worked as a clerk typist, and back in the olden days, women didn't make very much money because the presumption was that there was a man in their life that would help pay the bills and women didn't need much money. Well, there she was, with a child and a job as a clerk typist, which was the lowest paying job of the white-collar workers. She couldn't afford much of an apartment, so we did get a nice one, though it was an efficiency apartment, but there was no bedroom. I slept in what was supposed to be the walk-in closet, and my mother slept in the living room. There was no such thing as welfare, and there was no such thing as a free food program either. We had to make do with what my mother had, and if it wasn't enough, it just wasn't enough. And the result was that sometimes that quarter and dime, which bought my school lunch, would be there, and sometimes it wasn't. And if that quarter and dime wasn't there, well, I just didn't get lunch that day. But, you know, the school cafeteria workers knew. And those days when I did have a quarter and a dime, boy, they sure as heck loaded my plate full. I don't know why, but it seemed like I always had twice as much food on my tray as all the other kids. And I will never forget their kindness. Well, life was tough, I guess, but the saving grace to that whole situation was that I didn't know it was tough. So I didn't feel sorry for myself. One way, though, that I did manage to survive is that we lived near some boat docks where the wealthy people parked their yachts. And you know, you could get 2 cents return on a Coca-Cola bottle back in those days. And those wealthy people would put their bottles out on the docks. Well, it was about a quarter-mile walk from the dock to the local drugstore. But I had a box that I could carry Coke bottles in. And if I carried 50 Coke bottles, now that was 2 trips for me, to the drugstore and turned them in, I'd get $1. And if I got $1, I could sit there at the counter at the drugstore and I could buy a chopped steak, some mashed potatoes, a vegetable, and a glass of milk. And you know, if I was a good girl, those waitresses would throw some ice cream in for free. During the summer, those Coke bottles sat out by the rich people were actually, I believe, what kept me alive. And sometimes I got really lucky and I got more Coke bottles than I needed for food that day. And when I did, I put my money aside because I could get a ride downtown in our nation's capital for a dime, and a ride back home for a dime. And also, for 10 cents, I could get what we would call a White Castle hamburger and a bag of French fries, and for another nickel I could get a Coke. So I would be really all set to go with less than 50 cents in my pocket. One of the good things about that time of my life was that I never had a babysitter after 8 years old. I was a latchkey kid, so I was very free to come and go and do as I please and wander and explore the world. Nobody worried about rapists or children being snatched back then. We pretty much ran wild and free. Well, on one of my jaunts into our nation's capital, I had some spare money. I don't remember how I did, but I did. Now, I was about 11 years old at the time, and one of the things that I enjoyed doing the most was wandering bookstores. I used to just love the old, moldy, musty, used bookstores. And I went in there, there was a set of books, complete works of Dickens. And it was a huge set. It was big pictures, I think the books stood about 14 inches tall, and I don't know how wide, but they were huge books. And I was a very small, underweight, scrawny little 11-year-old. Well, I bargained and bargained and bargained, and whatever money I had on hand at the time, the bookseller took in exchange for those books. I don't think he could have sold them to anybody else anyhow. They stunk to high heaven. But he wrapped them up in twine in two bundles that were, I would say, came up to my knees anyhow. And I lifted him up and carried him on the bus. And oh, those books were so heavy to get home. As I got off the bus near our apartment building, the twine on one of the bundles broke. Well, I had no other means of getting them back, and I was not going to leave my precious books that I had worked so hard for sit there on the sidewalk. So I took the bundled books and I moved them a few yards. Then I went back and I picked up the scattered books and moved them up with those. Then I moved the other ones again, and I inchwormed them all the way to the apartment that we lived in. Well, my mother saw those books, and you know, she loved me, but she never understood me, and that's the truth. And she just shook her head, but she let me take my books into my little closet, and there I spent one of the best summers of my life reading the complete works of Dickens. Having worked so hard to get them, I was going to read every single word. I don't know whatever became of those books. I guess they got lost in some move or some transfer after Papa saved me, but I wish I still had them. However, what did not get lost is the wonderment of those stories, and I didn't lose the vocabulary that I learned from reading them and the use of sentence structure. Those were gifts that I will enjoy and have enjoyed all of my life. You know, the point of this story is not that life was tough and hard on me as a kid, because, as I said, I didn't know it was tough and hard. Therefore, I didn't suffer from it. However, I did work, and I worked damned hard for what I wanted and what I needed. And I think that that has made all the difference in life. As Sam in the mood to share tonight, I guess.